Hello, welcome to the Big Bad Marketing Podcast. I'm Janae.
And I'm Brooke, and we are two entrepreneurs jumping headfirst into building a business.
We are marketers and content creators at heart, and we're helping small business owners learn to play big with their marketing efforts, even on a small business budget.
So if you are ready to make big bad moves in your professional life, this podcast is for you. Welcome to episode number 28, How to Cope. The beauty
With
of create once, publish everywhere.
how
When
to
did,
cope with everything in marketing.
yes. So when is the first time that you heard cope? Was it?
That would be from you,
Oh, lovely.
directly from the wizard's mouth, maybe like 2 years ago. And you're like, we're gonna do this, learn how to do it. We're gonna cope with everything. And I was like, what is this lady talking about? And then you enlightened me, and now I'm like, yes.
Yes, it makes perfect sense now that you know what it is. So I actually heard about Cope from a previous boss of mine. Shout out to Patrick if you're listening. You taught me many things about content. Another content wisdom that he shared that I love is that your copy should be like a man's swim trunks, short enough, or no, long enough to cover everything, but short
Mm.
enough to be interesting.
Ooh, that's cute.
And I really liked that one too. So thanks, Patrick, for the various helpful anecdotes that you shared. But cope, or this idea of creating once and publishing everywhere, is a super helpful tactic that small business owners and businesses of any size really can leverage to create a really robust piece of content one time and then sort of slice and dice it across various platforms.
Okay, so you're saying do the heavy lifting in a really well thought out way one time and then piece it out over time in different places multiple times, and it's a little more efficient.
Absolutely. Efficiency is the name of the game. And this sort of tackles this idea of, well, can't I just create a post for Instagram and then just slap it on Facebook and LinkedIn and TikTok and put it in my email and put it in a blog? Can't I just do it that way? And it's like, well, I mean, you can, like the internet police aren't going to come and get you for for just straight
Oh, but the boring
copying.
police might.
Oh, sick burn. Yeah, and it really is like it's the differences in the way that people are using those platforms. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, if you really intentionally develop a post for LinkedIn to get engagement there, it's probably not going to play the same on Instagram because it's two completely different audiences. People are not trying to get their business updates on Instagram. They're just trying to have a good time and see some pretty stuff. And so it's sort of understanding those nuances and differences across those platforms and then
Mm.
use that to inform, a really streamlined way of repurposing, if you will, your content.
Sure. And there is certainly overlap here because here's a surprise secret alert. Like, I am a LinkedIn user and I am also an Instagram user. I live in both platforms. Like, I use both of those things. So it's not to say like I'm totally a different audience when I jump from one platform to the other and I'm going to receive it differently. I think it's more of the medium and the format and the platform itself being a different context for those things. So on LinkedIn, I am more actively looking for business solutions and understanding networking needs and operational needs and all things business related. And then when I am on Instagram, it's not like, okay, now I'm not interested at all in business operations. It's just, it would need to be morphed into a different format to make sense in that context.
Yes, and that makes perfect sense. And I think that's how most people are going to engage with things across platforms is right. It's like your base interests don't change. Like just because you follow wellness influencers on Instagram doesn't mean that you're not going to listen to a podcast about wellness. In fact, you very well may, but you might be looking for something different in a podcast than you look for from someone you're following on Instagram.
Agree with that. And I think part of this is like assuming a level of awareness for our listeners or for whoever it is that's creating this content, like that each of these platforms does serve a different overall purpose. So it's not that the content has to be like super specifically tailored and it's only going to make sense here. It's that the platforms themselves are designed to function differently. So you, in creating the content for each one, want to have those different formatting pieces in mind and functionalities in mind.
Yes, totally agree. It's like to give kind of a high level, and we'll go into a more explicit example here shortly of how to actually use this strategy, but it's sort of thinking through it like, okay, let me take a 20-minute video about my product and I'm going to upload that to YouTube. And then I'm going to strip the audio and I'm going to toss that into Apple Podcasts. And then from there, I'm going to slice some 15-second clips and I'm going to drop those on TikTok. And then I'm going to do some pull quotes and turn those into, something for Instagram, or I'm going to make a reel for Instagram. And then I'm going to take some of the copy and the interesting bits and turn that into a Facebook post. And then I'm going to pull out my 5 key points from that video and drop that into an email newsletter and link back to the YouTube video. Like it's sort of thinking holistically about how can I create this one piece of content and then drip it onto all these other channels in a way that's going to work for each of those platforms. And like you're saying, in the formats that those platforms prefer.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that's the ultimate message is like there is some duplication happening because you have done this thorough thinking through of whatever the topic is in the first place. And you probably do want to share, your point A across the different platforms. I think the point here is like massaging the delivery and making sure it's applicable to those different places. And the part about duplicating it, like the chances of me seeing if I'm following your fitness, whatever your fitness account on a podcast and on Instagram and on Facebook, like the chances of me seeing all three of those touch points is low. So you could literally just like copy and paste it in all of those places. But the point is all that we're getting at, which is the functionalities and the formats are different. So it would be weird to just share like a 60-minute audio clip on Facebook, right? Like that's just, it's not the forum for it.
Yeah, totally agree. And if someone likes you enough to follow you in all of those places, they probably don't mind hearing from you, even if it is a similar message, right? Like they obviously like you. They're
Oh, they're going to eat it
committed.
up.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What are the beginnings of this cope method?
Yeah, so it really comes down to content planning. And we talk a lot about having a holistic content strategy and what a novel idea to actually think about the things that you're going to put out. And we've done several episodes on choosing the right social media channels to be on and how to develop your social media strategy in particular. And so before we kind of dive into this, it's important to say, just because we are talking about all of the various platforms you could use, you should only use the platforms that make sense for you and where your business is right now. So just because we're saying, oh, you could take this and put the video on YouTube and then send it on LinkedIn and then Instagram, that we are not at all saying that you need to be on all these platforms. And in fact, we will tell you, don't go onto a particular platform until you have a strategy for it and until you can commit to showing up consistently. So even at Big Bad Marketing, we have this podcast, we have a blog, we have email marketing, and we are just dipping our toes into social media because we are just now at the point in our business where we feel like we can effectively manage posting consistently on social media. So this is not a everything all at once sort of approach.
It's a part of the larger process of building sustainable operations. and creating the foundations for long-term sustainable success for your business and your marketing.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And in fact, a key part of creating a cope strategy for your business is leveraging systems to help you manage the work, because you cannot do this if you do not have organized systems in place. Like, for one, you need a system to track where you're publishing these particular things, right? You
Mm.
need your content calendar to consider all of these various pieces of content and their platforms, and you need to allocate time for both the creation of that content and the repurposing of that content onto other platforms. So, for example, maybe you decide to do one blog post per month. That's going to be a super long form blog post. So your content calendar should have that long form blog post, but it should also have, say if you're doing email marketing with a monthly newsletter and you're on Instagram, you should allocate space in your content calendar for the time that it's going to take for you to then pull out pieces of that blog post to use for your Instagram posts and actually create the graphics for those posts and the descriptions and the hashtags and everything else that goes with it.
Oh yeah, and that's such a rabbit hole in itself because it's like, okay, is this just going to be a picture, a static post on Instagram? Is this going to be a carousel? Is this going to be a reel? Is it a story? Is it a video? And then once I create that graphic, am I going to reuse the graphic somewhere else? Am I going to use it as inspiration and put it some on a different platform, kind of zhuzhed up and changed? Am I going to create a caption? Is it going to stand alone? Does it need text on the picture? So there's so many considerations as you think this through. And that's why it's like there are a million permutations of recreating your content. It's so easy to not duplicate it and be just sort of monotone like that and just like, okay, it's the same thing everywhere.
Yeah.
So like, why not innovate and be a little exciting for your people?
Yes, absolutely. And the foundational piece of this is making sure that that base content that you create, whether that is a video or a long form blog post, like that is a super high quality. So if it is a video, like making sure it's a high resolution video or that there's high resolution audio with it, like set yourself up for success from that first content creation. Think about getting both landscape and portrait mode for photographs that you're doing so that you can use those across platforms where it's appropriate for each type. Think about creating a content asset library. So, like you're talking about templates, graphics, images, sound bites, quotes, like make these one time using a tool like Canva and then be able to repurpose them for the various things that you're going to do as a result.
What
And
about, oh, yeah,
go ahead.
what about modular content structures?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to think about the content that you're building with a more modular structure in mind. So thinking about like a self-contained section. So this sort of goes back to SEO blog writing in some ways. If you think about it like, okay, we could have a section that's how to do something. We could have a section called what is, like even in this podcast episode and in the eventual blog post that we're going to create for it, we're going to have a section that's how did Cope start? How to do it for your content strategy? What are the benefits? And when you think about it in that way, it's more modular and it's like, okay, we could pull that out and use that somewhere else. And that could be a standalone informational thing.
Sure. Okay. So it's like piecing it out and parsing it out. It's making me think of like the index in a very large book, but not like a novel, like an educational book that's got really deep dives into different topics. Maybe a man, what are those
I
things
had
called
this for
that
my personal training manual years ago, and I would
sure,
go to the
sure.
index and reference.
Index.
Is
What are
that what
those
you're
ones
trying
like
to
that? There
say?
was like 50 books and they were all covering from
Like
A
an
to Z different topics.
encyclopedia?
And there you go. Yeah.
Oh,
And that's got
wow. Are we so
indices.
old that we remember encyclopedias?
I've only heard about those.
My grandpappy had an encyclopedia.
Yeah, no, I just mean like you open one of those up and there's all of the structure is in place so you can find exactly what you're looking for within the text. Of course, there's an alphabetical order, but often like in a library, like the Dewey Decimal System is all categorized. I worked at a library before, so I know this. Like, because you hear the buzzword Dewey Decimal System, you're like, yeah, libraries, but actually it's much more complicated than it seems. Like the numbers and the colors and the shapes and sizes. Um, no, but it's organized by category and topic. So it's like figuring out where does it fit into this system. And I think I got all excited when you started talking about systems because we're just like systems people. We love building out a workflow that's going to make sense for the long term and cope in terms of creating content. It just like so nicely and seamlessly fits into creating a system that's sustainable.
Oh, yeah. And there are so many ways to think about implementing systems. And like you're saying, it could be color coded. And that could be something that helps you if you're the one creating the content or your team, if you do have support with this, to know where things are going, where something is in the process, and how to push the ball forward in a way that's not like I'm calling you every 5 minutes being like, hey, is this Instagram post done? Is it not? Like, let these systems work for you. So, with that more modular content structure, you could also think about hub and spoke approach to content, which is something that we've probably talked about before on this podcast, which is typically used in, SEO blogging conversations about where you would have sort of this pillar piece of content, which might be, say, a comprehensive guide to email marketing. And then all of the spokes around that pillar would be things like how to create a welcome email, what are drip campaigns, what are nurture campaigns, nurture versus drip campaigns, how to choose the right one for you. And you'd sort of have all of these ideas in these hubs around your one spoke. So that can be another means of creating content where that really comprehensive guide page is going to then later be broken out into these other modular subsections.
Oh yeah, I mean this is another whole rabbit hole here, but the visual for the hub and spoke for me really does it because it's like brainstorming as a kid. I don't know if you did this exercise, but they'd have be like, what is the topic of this article that you're going to write, this essay, whatever it is, and you put it in the center in a big circle. And then they're like, okay, what are the three subtopics that you're going to talk about as like supporting details for your main topic? And it's like it's so elementary, but it's very helpful for me. I'm like a visual learner, so to think about all of the different topics that are related to my main point, and then even those sometimes can have their own spokes, so you just have this whole like brainstorming drawing of amazement because you're like, here's everything I will ever need to write about for my website.
Yes, and that is how topic ideation happens sometimes. And if you are in a particular niche or subspecialty, that's a great way to do it. And you really can, in a single afternoon, develop your content plan for an entire year. And maybe you want to put that in our annual marketing calendar to help you plan that out a little bit better. Go to
Yeah.
our homepage and sign up for our emails to get that. But it it really I think as we continue to talk through COPE and how to implement it, you'll see that there's a lot of upfront work required to implement this. But once your systems are in place, this is going to hopefully reduce the costs of content creation for you and create some efficiencies.
Okay, I want to pause here and be like, this is not easy. If these types of like if you're overwhelmed thinking about that right now, that's okay. That makes sense because this task demands thought, energy, and the expertise that you bring to your business, which is probably why you went into business, because you have a lot to share on your topic. So, number one, just like shameless plug for Big Bad Marketing, this is where we thrive and helping you create that strategy that's well thought out so that you have a game plan in place long term and you can constantly go back to it and rely on it and pivot and change and pull what you need and forget what you don't, right? Like we would love to help you. So I'll just leave that there. But the other piece of this is it's okay because the heavy lifting that you do now is going to pay off in simplifying your life and giving you a very clear roadmap later on. So you don't have to keep being like, oh no, we did this thing and it was short term and it wasn't well thought out. And now we have to do it again. And then you're going in circles. And man, I do that too often in my personal life. And I'm like, oh, I was doing this. And then I forgot to change the laundry and I forgot to do the dishes. And then I like, how did I start cooking this meal without having any clean dishes to put it on? Like, I don't know. But if that kind of thing is happening to you in your work life, at least, like, we are here and this is how to start thinking about it in a more structured way. And it's okay to put the time in upfront so the dividends will pay off later.
Yes. And
Also, I'm not a tax expert.
not a tax expert. In the early stages, like you're saying, Janae, putting those systems in place is so critical, and it can save you from that constant context switching and the, oh, now I made that blog post, what happens next? So you might be developing playbooks, internal playbooks for each platform so that you know the requirements of a particular platform and the best practices. And so that you know when you do a Pinterest pin, the exact specifications of what that pin needs to be in terms of pixels and how it needs to show up. You might also create some internal rules for like what stays the same across platforms. You might be able to reuse graphics on 2 or 3 platforms, or you might just simply want to for ease, and that's okay too. So create those types of rules, like creating the graphics and the images and giving your team a library of these templates that they can use to repurpose things. Like, this is all the upfront effort that is going to go into it, but that is going to serve you in time.
And I don't know if you are going to talk about this, but I find it really helpful to create those posts all at the same time. That way, like, so I like to work by like, okay, we've established we're creating X blog post this month. And then I like to pull out like the 5 key points that I want to talk about on the social media posts once I've created the blog. But I'm not going to just republish those 5 points on every platform. I'm just going to say, okay, point 1 is like eat your vegetables. And I'm going to figure out how I want to talk about that on every platform based on a strategy I've developed for each platform. And I like to just write it in a cluster. Like, okay, so here's all about eating your vegetables on Instagram, which is going to be different than eating your vegetables on LinkedIn, which is going to be maybe like a long white page explanation of the thing, versus on Instagram, it might be a much shorter thing with a bigger visual component. So you can clump the workloads together and build out the templates while you're doing this for the first few times. And that's going to take a little longer. But as you move through it, now you have the templates built out and it was all like useful and part of developing actual content, not just content in theory.
Yes, I love that. That batching of production, that batching of eventual distribution, like that's incredibly valuable. And it will definitely save you time to do it that way. It's like with anything else, when your brain is fresh on something, keep going with it. So you might decide, hey, I'd like to implement a cope strategy across these 3 platforms, and I'm going to do that on Tuesdays from 2 to 5 p.m. when I don't have any client calls. And let that be your block where that's all you do is develop these things and sort of get everything ready. And then potentially using a tool that has the ability to publish across multiple platforms,
Boom.
or just manually set it up, schedule it, do whatever needs to be done during that time too. But definitely love that idea of sort of doing things all at once when you're already in it.
It's like meal prep.
Oh, yeah.
Big fan.
Oh, yeah. Big fan.
But first, do the dishes.
All right, so why don't we talk through an example of what cope might look like in the wild? Good? All right. Let's say that you are a retail store and you decide that you're going to start publishing blog content, and you come up with your comprehensive blog post about 5 designer-inspired outfits for busy working moms. We
Ooh.
love it. Awesome. That's going to be a fantastic blog. So as you start to plan that blog, you say, I'm going to get photos of each outfit. I'm going to get professional photos, or I'm just going to have really nice iPhone photos that are going to be, from different angles from different, landscape, portrait. You're going to have all the things so that you have this chunk of photos that you can look through later to use on various platforms. You're going to give really detailed descriptions of the pieces. You're going to give links to where people can buy them. Maybe you come up with some budget-friendly alternatives for the designer items, styling tips for different body types, and maybe suggestions for a quick morning routine for that busy mom who's trying to get the kids off to school and get out the door. Amazing. That's going to be a really cool blog post, right?
Yeah, where can I read this? Is it done yet?
It's still in progress, and I am not the person to ask about fashion in any capacity. So step number one is making sure that those base assets are super high quality. So making sure that the photos, like I said, the multiple angles, your written content is super detailed. It's already really clear. Maybe you took some video while you were taking the photos of the outfits. And once you have that, then we get into that sort of ideation phase, like you were talking about with the eat your vegetables for Instagram. What does that look like? So what do those designer outfits for busy moms look like when you want to plug that on Instagram? So maybe you have a post carousel that has 5 outfits with those styling tips. Maybe you have a story highlighting a particular outfit. Maybe you have a reel showing a 15-second morning routine with one of the outfits. And you sort of put it in this context of, okay, designer style without the designer time commitment. Awesome,
Mm,
cool. Busy moms might be into that on Instagram, yeah?
definitely.
Yeah. So what about Pinterest if you were going to repurpose for that platform?
So I think on Pinterest, you are gonna, I think, let me back up, which is as you create posts for different platforms, the idea is to think through the audience on that platform, how the functionality and the format of the content is going to live. And then probably most important is like, what are people doing on this platform and why are they there? Right. Because if they're on Instagram, they're there for a different reason than if they are on Pinterest. So on Pinterest, they might be more interested in seeing like completed, get the look images and get to see all of the pieces put together. Or like building a board of different busy mom looks on the go situation, and they're like pinning them so that they can later come back and reference it. And then maybe actually they'll click into that and find the link to buy the product from your store. So you could create vertical pins for each outfit with some like text overlay with 5-minute designer looks thrown on top. And then that makes it easy for people clicking around for pin and inspiration to just find it and be like, this is exactly what I want, versus reading a super long expose about the different buttons and the seams and different fashion notes that, I think that's why we do marketing and not fashion, Brooke, but point still stands.
Yep, agreed. And then thinking through to your email newsletter, right? Why are these people here? They've already agreed that they want marketing emails from you. This is a captive audience. So you might just give them a link to the full blog post. If
Ooh,
you've had good engagement previously, you might do an excerpt with a link to the full blog post, and that's really all you need to do to plug in your email. You might also offer those people a bonus tip that you don't include in content on other platforms because those are people who already like you and you kind of want to say, hey, you know what? Because you're my people, here's a little extra something something for you.
which I think it's important to know, if you're going to do that, you got to tell those people that they are getting something extra since they're part of your internal crew, your inner circle, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, call it out. I'm giving you this thing for free. You're welcome. All
You are
right.
welcome.
What about if you wanted to take this to TikTok?
Okay, so TikTok platform is going to be like short, quick bursts of information in fast videos. So you might do like a 30-second transition between outfits showing someone how to put it all together. And you're not necessarily doing it quickly, but the video is super compressed, showing putting the outfit together real quick, or like a quick change video. Or really popular right now is get ready with me's. So you can show yourself in your closet putting on the pieces or like the model. And then the voice would be more casual and like you're talking to a friend or explaining the outfit to a friend.
Love that. So LinkedIn, as much as you might like to just drop your designer duds blog post on LinkedIn. I think this is really an opportunity to again take it back to the drawing board of who is on LinkedIn and what are they here for. So these might be busy, professional, focused working moms. So you might do a little post about how your style can impact your perception or people's perception of you as a woman in the workplace. You might have something about time management for working parents and how shaving 10 minutes off of your time to get ready can impact the rest of your day, or something that you could do professionally in those 10 minutes, spend 10 minutes networking instead of trying to figure out what to wear. Something like that that's going to be more appropriate for that platform through the lens of like strategic wardrobe planning for professional moms.
Yeah. Really simplifying the process for someone who's already in the hustle mode because they have operational efficiencies and workflows to develop and not outfits.
Yeah. Yep. So that's just one example of how you can leverage this idea of create once, publish everywhere and take the same concept across multiple platforms in a way that speaks to the audiences on those platforms.
Mhm. The key being acknowledging the difference between the platforms, the why, and being able to draw up your posts or content based on that from your initial big piece, your big
Yeah,
bad piece.
big bad piece.
All right, what's the next step in this process?
Yeah, so from there, you really just want to be able to create these sort of pathways between the platforms. So, like we alluded to with the email newsletter, you might link back to your blog. On your Pinterest, you might link back to your blog. On your Instagram, you might link back to your blog. Ultimately, it's sort of like, where do I want people to go? So, if your whole purpose behind creating that original piece of content is to direct traffic to particular pieces in your online store, then maybe you link to those places instead of your blog. Like think about the purpose of the content to begin with, and then take it back to how can I get people ultimately where I want them to go? How do I get them to do the thing I want them to do, which is ultimately make a purchase from my site?
Yes. And Brooke, you're reminding me that if our listeners have not yet listened, we just recorded a podcast episode on defining your North Star. So understanding the direction of this is like geared towards the business on the whole, but I think that the concept still applies here. And you're not just posting on Instagram for funsies, right? There should be clear goals and a direction that your social platforms, that all of your marketing are helping you achieve and moving towards. So that will make it so much easier to understand. Okay, I don't need people from Instagram to go read the blog. What I need them to do is go buy the shirt that's shown in the picture, whatever it is.
So how do we know if this is worth it? How do you know if Cope is an effective strategy or if you should just kind of drop it?
I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think we got to measure it. I think we have to measure where, blog traffic is coming from. If we're saying, okay, through my email and Instagram and TikTok, I'm going to point all these three platforms back to my blog, then I should be able to look at referral traffic for my particular blog post and be able to say, I had 70 people come in through Instagram and only three from TikTok. Maybe it's worth my time to repurpose content on Instagram, and maybe it's not on TikTok. And obviously, you can't look at the data in a silo. You need to have more than an N of one for a type of experiment like this. So maybe you commit to, hey, I'm going to do Cope for 3 months. That's three blog posts, three times that I'm breaking it down for all these other channels. And then after 3 months, I'm going to look at the engagement and see where my people are coming from. And from there, I can decide how to continue forward and which platforms I want to use ongoing.
Sure. So a little bit of smart goal setting at the outset, and then following up, checking in, tracking, assessing, pivoting when needed. I think these are sort of foundational pieces of business savvy that we talk about time and time again. Like that's great that you're going to implement this new campaign, but how are you going to measure this, or what shows success? And benchmarking that is crucial.
Yeah. And I think a big component of determining success too is asking yourself or the team of people or person who is creating your content how it feels for them. And that is obviously going to be a more qualitative versus quantitative thing. But if this is completely draining you, then maybe it's not the right move right now. And that's okay. This is a really big undertaking and it does require a lot of strategic thought. Like we mentioned, putting those systems in place is going to help, but it's only going to help to a point because at the end of the day, you are still doing some of this slicing and dicing and putting things into the different platforms. And so if it is taking a toll on you, maybe it's not worth it right now. And maybe you circle back to it when you have a team of people to support an endeavor like this.
Sure. And or I'd say scale. Like if this feels daunting just in this context, like scale it back to your own capabilities with a clear sense of the kinds of resources you have to allocate to this. Because if you're like, I cannot possibly do all of this for every platform, fine. But perhaps if you already have a blog initiative going, just use it month by month to think through what is this blog going to be about? Great. Let me pull 3 quotes from here and then recycle, upcycle those to put them on my 2 social media platforms, right? Like this doesn't have to be everywhere all the time, everything. And that's, I think, how a lot of companies wind up with multiple campaigns happening at once. Is there's a lot of different things being talked about. They want to stay relevant, they want to stay top of mind. So they're hitting all the marks, and that's okay too.
Yeah, love that. And that is such an important consideration because your time is finite. The amount of time you can commit to content creation more broadly is finite. So,
You got to be able to cope with it.
yeah, and get the most bang for your buck, right? And that's where the data can be really helpful. And you can then decide what is being effective and how to save yourself time and stress and energy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So you can put it back into things that really matter.
Yeah, and move the needle for your business.
Yay.
Yay. All right. Thanks for listening.
Bye.